Good evening. It is 7:09 on Monday, June 8th, 2020. This is a special meeting of the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Board of Education. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Kevin Liming, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Carpenter,
Here.
Mrs. France,
Here.
Mrs. Long,
Here.
Mr. Price,
Here.
Mrs. Sloughman.
Here.
All right, all are present. Please stand as you are able or remove your hats, gentlemen, and in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
The United States of America, to the republic for which it stands,
under God,
one nation,
indivisible,
and
and justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
All right, this evening's board meeting is really for discussion of a couple of big items. Some might want to call it a session, a special meeting. It is everyday kindergarten. We have received a number of comments from community members, parents in particular, with they share concerns about the all-day, everyday kindergarten and having it, not having it, what the impact might be. It is certainly a topic where we have multiple risks that we have to balance and address. We have the safety risk, we have an educational risk, we have a financial risk. So we're going to discuss through some of those this evening and hear what some of the recommendations are from administration. We're also going to have a discussion on district finances and potential levy opportunities or ways for us to address the financial crisis that we are in. But first is the all-day, everyday kindergarten, and so I'm going to turn this over to Elizabeth.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, so again, you started a little bit on that. So what really, you provided just a little bit of background on there, but really what precipitated this, of us looking at this, is obviously our financial situation that we're in with the failure of the two past levies, and then also the reduction from the state this fiscal year of $659,000, and then the anticipated $600,000 or 10% reduction that is rumored or forewarned at will be coming our way the next fiscal year. So as we're putting all those pieces together and then also putting staffing together for next year, of trying to put all those puzzle pieces together and making sure that we are looking at every situation and in every area to see if there is some type of cost savings or some type of financial benefit to the school district. And I've said a few times that unfortunately we're at the point here with the financial situation that we're in, is that really decision making has to be through the financial lens more so than through the educational lens. And I hate to even say that those words are coming out of my mouth. However, you know, that's really where we're at with the finances, because if you can't get the financial situation together, the educational piece won't be there either. So the administration and I really got together and have been thinking about these and trying to brainstorm things for quite a while here, and even more so within the past week or so. So we've looked at anywhere from similar to situation from last year. Again, to also reiterate, so the financial situation is a major reason of why we are looking at this situation. The other pieces, as important, are the low enrollment that we have. We're usually at about 170, 180 when all things come into play in the fall. and we're usually probably 25 or 30 higher than where we're at right now. So we're in the high 20s right now of enrollment for both all day, every day, and purple and gold put together. So we're in about the low 130s. So that's where we're at right now. But even so, that is much lower than we are normally at this point. And also our all day, every day numbers are much lower than what we're at. We're about 15, 20, 25, 20, 25 lower than what we normally are at this point. And so that, and then plus also the other key piece, and this is the big unknown, is obviously we were at remote learning in Q4, and will we be in remote learning for next year? So trying to do our best guesstimate with that. You know, in the past week or so, again, things continue to change on a daily, weekly basis with things. So about a week ago, Governor DeWine is saying that kids will be back in the classroom next year. However, that's extremely vague and broad of what that really means. Does that mean 100%? Does that mean 50%? Does that mean some other percent? And so forth. So trying to do our best guesstimate on that at this point. And then if we do go to some type of remote learning through the school year, the tuition-based all day, every day, would we do like we did in the spring, last payment of waiving that if they're not, at school for that all day, every day kindergarten, would they be eligible for that reimbursement? Additional pieces to the whole thing is that if we come back at 50%, that would mean if we did a true 50%, that means your all day, every day would only be coming half time. And that's essentially the purple and gold amount of minutes. And then if you're purple and gold, which is 2.5 on average days a week, would they only be coming in 1 day a week during that during that purple gold, if we did some type of 50% model of number of students coming in, so 50% capacity. So, those are pieces to that are kind of unique to kindergarten. The other grades obviously are there every day, all day, every day, whereas kindergarten, some kids are just there half time. So those are other dynamics that make this situation unique. So we looked at all the angles here. Do we stay with the 4-day, all day, every day classes? Do we go down to 3? Do we go down to 2? Do we go down to 1? And then the equivalent of those, or do we go with no all day, every day? And obviously those parents that are signed up for all day, every day, we have about 87 or so right now. Would all of those students go to purple and gold, or would they find other opportunities with other kindergartens, private kindergartens throughout the community? So, I don't think we can assume that all of those parents would come straight to purple and gold, but they're going to try to find another place to do all day, every day kindergarten. So those are all the different dynamics and pieces to this whole situation. So as we were brainstorming, we're trying to see, are there bigger spaces at Stephen Bell that we could utilize, that we could maybe put a whole class of 25 kindergartners in? For example, the library, where even if we're at 50%, that you could spread those students out. Or could we utilize, we're at 50% capacity, could we utilize other staff that maybe would be freed up by that 50% capacity and have them help out with kindergarten classes? And then obviously we have the financial piece of the situation of the tuition, and would we reimburse that if there was some type of remote learning possibility? So as we're putting that all together, and also another piece, I reached out to Champions, who's our daycare provider. They had initially, at this early stage, again, not with much detail, but they did say that they would be open to providing some services throughout the school day rather than before or after school. So that's another piece as we were investigating and trying to look at all the angles of seeing if that could possibly help out with all of that. So, and then another piece, again, I know I keep on saying there's another piece, but that's why there's so many tentacles to this whole thing. You know, the ramifications if students leave and they don't ever come back. You know, that's another piece. And we heard that, like David had said earlier that we had heard from emails from folks. You know, those are all the possibilities and the benefit of having all day, every day, consistency, academics, and so forth. So those are all pieces that play into this whole thing. So what I do have a recommendation and suggestion at this point, but there is kind of a caveat to it with the remote learning. Are there questions before I get to kind of my thought process of what we should strongly consider doing?
My concern is that if, like, using champions, those people are not certified educators, right? They may be in school, but they haven't received their certification yet. And if we use some of our additional teachers, they're not certified for kindergarten either. Are they? They're usually, are they K through 4 or?
We would use,
You know,
I mean, so the champions piece, if we would go down, again, we were just trying to investigate all the angles.
right.
So the champions piece would definitely be a childcare option. It would not be a kindergarten option. So it would be for those parents, if we went to, you know, limited number of all day, every day, or no all day, every day, that would be an option of, you need childcare for your child. We have this option over here that you could utilize. You wouldn't have to utilize, but you could utilize, and it's in our building. But it's definitely not kindergarten. It is daycare.
Okay.
Even though they do a fantastic job, they really do.
True.
Pieces,
But
yeah, it's not kindergarten.
yeah, okay.
Right. And then the other piece of the other staff. So we definitely would either we would use, if we go down that angle, or that we would use staff that would be certified to teach or would be okay with teaching kindergarten students. So we would use certified staff doing that.
Okay.
And it would be in conjunction with the kindergarten teachers. So it'd be kind of a team teaching model if we would go down that angle, or a combination of maybe some of them are our bigger spaces in Stephen Bell, and then maybe some others are team teaching, half their students in one room, half the students in another room. Again, that would really only work out if we're at 50% capacity, where we would utilize those staff members in that situation.
Okay.
But it would be under the guidance of that kindergarten teacher in their class.
Hey, Doug, question here from Kevin. One of the things I know that you were going to check into, maybe you said it already, I just missed it, but whether we are required to refund the tuition if we get into a situation where the state's directed, you know, we start 100% capacity, they direct us to 50%, or ultimately they shut us down for 2 or 3 months or whatever. So are we able to continue and not basically refund it? Because the people that are listening, you know, what you have to consider is when you hire a teacher, you got to hire them for the full year. You got to hire them with a contract for a salary. You cannot cut that.
Yeah.
And so our option is either, you know, not have all day every day, or look at the potential of what we do if we get into a crisis situation with COVID like we did this past year. So I think it's a pretty important question to have resolved as to, one, do we have to refund the tuition, which creates a real serious situation for the district financially, or are we permitted to legally to retain the fund, and then the teachers can still provide some level of, you know, it's harder with the younger kids, of course, but some level of instructional materials, you know, find some way to where there can be some value gained from it. But anyway, to have a long-winded way of asking, have you resolved whether we are free from the requirement to refund the tuition if we get into a crisis like we did this year with COVID?
So there's a couple pieces to that. So we could write it in agreement with them that we would still be providing 5 days worth of instruction. However, there would be nothing that would preclude a parent to say, I just want to go back to purple and gold. So, you know, we wouldn't be able to deny them to go back to purple and gold, but we could definitely write it in there, especially if they paid for that month, that we're going to provide that service for them for the rest of the month. But we could have that in the paperwork, but there, again, like I said, there would nothing be to preclude them to just say, I just want to go back to purple and gold, rather than paying for all day, every day kindergarten. Does that answer your question?
Do they pay on a month? I assume they pay on a monthly basis, right? Not for the full year. So then I guess the request would be that they not, withdraw their child, because I think obviously with all the emails we got, a lot of parents are very concerned about this. They very much value all day, everyday kindergarten, but they also have to understand we're already in severe financial crisis, emergency at the district level, and we just can't buy off, tens of thousands of more dollars per month if all of a sudden we get in a situation like we just faced, here throughout the spring. So that's the quandary that we're faced with here.
Yeah, if we are at 50%, if the state would say you're at 50% capacity, meaning 50% of students would come one day and 50% of students come another day. As we talk as administrators, we think that we can put a plan together that would have kindergarten follow the same schedule as they have in the past. So all day, every day would be there all day, every day, and the purple and gold would be there 2.5 days, even if the rest of the district was on 50% capacity. However, if the rest of the district, if everybody is on 100% remote learning, then we're in a pretty serious situation in the entire nation and maybe world. And so that would be a different dynamic, definitely there. But again, that wouldn't preclude them from just, we could say you have to pay tuition, but they could always at any point after a month could say, I want to go back to purple and gold.
So if we had, let's say, nominally our 150 or 170 enrolled, and then they don't come to school anymore for 6 months, what does it cost us, just ballpark figure here, per month if we lose that revenue? It's whatever, it's 3,600 divided by 9, I guess, times the number of kids, right? But I can't do the math here real quick on my feet. So
yeah, it would probably be about $10,000 a classroom per month.
A classroom, so $40,000 a month.
$10,000 per classroom, per all day, every day classroom.
And we have 4 of those, right? That's $40,000 a month.
If we went to remote learning, 100% remote learning. Now, we did work some numbers, and so the tuition is there, plus the amount we pay the salary, plus the way we have it now is if we do 4 all day, every day, and 1 purple and gold, we can move 1 teacher to another position. So that would be a cost savings to that also. So it would take, if you add all that together, it would take us 2 or 3 months of remote learning. We could handle 2 or 3 months of remote learning before we would start being in the red and start losing money, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So yeah, there is, I guess, as we dug into it and looked a little bit harder, there is it's going to take a few months for us to start being in the red and losing money, where in the past, when we were looking at those numbers, it was going to be right away that we were going to lose money compared to the amount of tuition that we're bringing in and compared to the teachers that we would have. If we went with 4 all day, every day, 87 students who are currently enrolled, and then 1 purple and gold. So we went with that and then moved a teacher to an open position, not add a position, but to an open position.
Oh.
We would have probably about 2 to 3 months where we could be losing, on remote learning before we would then go in the red.
So with current enrollment, we only need 1 teacher for kindergarten, purple and gold.
Yeah, we have probably about 44 students enrolled in purple and gold.
Okay, and historically, how many people drop in and sign up the last month? Is that,
Well, I think it's hard to determine historical numbers because I think that's why we're so low right now is because of the COVID situation. Right now, we would probably be at 150 or 160 right now rather than 130. So we're 20,
Yeah.
25, 30 away from where we would normally be. So that's the
Okay.
guessing game. It's really hard to guess that. Now, if we got so if we did go with 4 all day, every day and 1 purple and gold and our numbers grew, if we went up to 100 all day, every day, we could add an additional 13 all day, every day students tuition.
okay,
And if we added other purple and gold students, we could then hire, we got to that number, we could hire an additional half-day purple and gold teacher as we got closer to the beginning of the school year.
okay,
So that would be a late add that we could do if the numbers really creeped up. But that would, in the all day, every day, that would give us 13 additional spots that we could grow in. Because some people are just, I think people are just waiting here, and that's the challenge with it.
yeah. So going back to a question that came up before, for kindergartners who would be on an IEP, some of them have an IEP that it specifies they're supposed to be in all day, and others that I know the parents would prefer that. So do we have, is that part of the plan too, to accommodate those that want to be in an all day, every day, even if they're going to take a purple and a gold, so to speak?
Well, that is an IEP team decision of what that specific student needs. So in the past, again, it depends. So because each kid is individualized, especially on the IEP. I'll just speak generally here that usually they go to purple and gold rather than all day, every day. If that is what is best needed for that student. If that student needs repetition and they just need a few times before they get it, so to speak, that probably going to purple and gold would be more beneficial to them than doing all day, every day. Because purple and gold would be same thing, on Monday, same thing would be repeated on Tuesday.
Right.
But again, when I say that, that's a very generalized statement, and that is an IEP decision of what that specific student would need.
Okay. It's not necessarily a solution for all of them, obviously.
No, it's not the solution for all of them. It just depends on that specific student's needs of whether they need purple and gold all day, every day, or so forth. But again, that's up to that IEP team.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, if we were to divide up our all day, every day population into 3 sections, that would be 29 students, correct?
Pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we could go with that, and as other people enroll, then change up to 4 sections.
29 kids is too many to be in a
It
kid.
is way too many, but we're trying to get this taken care of.
I know, but I think we'd have as many complaints about that as we would about the rest, because I don't see how you could have anything educational going on with 29 kids in a room.
Oh, I've done it with 35. It isn't the most advantageous thing to do, but this is the time we're in. We're all making sacrifices. I would rather do that than junk the program.
Yeah.
The other piece, another way of looking at it is if we only do 3 all day, every day, that we just cut it off at 75 students and not do 87. We do lose some tuition at that point with those 12 students, and do those 12 students come back to purple, or do they transition to purple and gold or not? We normally have 105, 110 all day, every day students. We were at a waiting list last year. We had 100 kids. And the year before that, we had 5 sections of all day, every day kindergarten. There were not 25 kids in those classes. I think there was probably low 20s, 22, 23.
So we're like 18 students away from that 4 sections where we'd be comfortable.
13.
We're at 13.
13. Okay, so I don't think that's a big gap. This is what, June 8th? I
Yeah.
bet we could pick up 13 students and have 4 good sections.
I think that has a lot of potential. I think as people figure out and get a little more solidified on what next year looks like,
Right.
those are more reasonable numbers. If you do 4 all day every day, there's 22, 21 kids in those classes. So there's potential for 2 to 3 more kids in those classes. And then you have about 22, 23 in your purple gold. And if we would have a huge influx of purple gold, we could then hire a half-time teacher. We wouldn't need a full-time teacher unless the numbers really exploded. But we could do it on an as-needed basis on the purple and gold.
I think that's maybe viable to pick up 13 students. If
Yeah.
people know we're in there, we're going to play ball, I bet we'll get more students.
Yeah. There's probably people who are watching this evening.
If we don't, and it, let's say, decreases, nothing to say people couldn't pull out before, the school year starts, then, Doug, what point do you have to commit to hire, having full-time positions for teachers and all day, every day? Can you, kind of like where Virginia was originally going down the path of maybe just do 3 for now, well, do 4 for now, but maybe not actually sign that 4th one for a few more weeks till we see what's going on. But we'll have full intent to do that. But we just don't commit ourselves to it. Because all of a sudden it starts decrementing because we get a significant increase of COVID cases or whatever. Now we're up the creek then. So long story short, how long can you defer signing the 4th teacher for the upcoming year?
Well, there's a few angles to look at that. So we, because of, and it's on the agenda on this next Thursday's meeting, is we've had a few teachers resign because they're moving on to another school district. So it's opening up another spot here. So we have a little flexibility, but we have just a lot of moving parts right now that we would love to get solidified for next school year. Are you saying in the next few weeks if something crazy comes out, or not crazy, but substantial comes out from the state? Yeah, I know, crazy. Something substantial comes out to the state that says we're not coming back in the fall. Is that what you're exploring?
I mean, because right now we're sitting at 87, right? There's nothing to say that couldn't start decrementing if people start getting bad news. And then if we've already committed ourselves to hiring 4 teachers, for kindergarten teachers, then it's only going to get even worse and worse than what it is right now. So kind of down the path Virginia was going, 29, I fully agree, is too many per class. But it kind of gives us a contingency plan here. We go with, 3 that we commit to at this point, and then we wait here a little bit. Hope we see the numbers start trickling up. If we got another 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, or whatever, it's heading in the right direction. Then as we approach toward, early July, mid-July, or whatever, then we could go ahead and, solidify going with the fourth teacher. I don't know, Virginia, if that kind of aligns with what you're thinking maybe, but that's just an idea.
Again,
I think the state of Ohio only allows the maximum is 25 for a kindergarten class.
Yeah.
I don't think you can have more than 25.
That with an aid or without an aid?
So we do have.
I just looked it up real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked it up and it says the max is 1 teacher to 25 students in the state of Ohio for kindergarten.
Is
Okay.
it teacher or adults?
It's a good question.
We're looking at that. So, Kevin, just to speak to what you're saying, so if in Virginia, so if I understand this correctly, let's say we have 87 students right now. In a couple weeks, something happens and 25 of them say, whoa, I don't want to be an all-day, everyday kindergarten. I want to go back to purple and gold. Would we have the flexibility to pull one of those teachers and assign them somewhere else? Is that what you're saying?
It sounds like it.
Yes, either assign that person somewhere else or not commit to hiring,
They're already hired.
Yeah, so it's more shuffling, right?
Well, that person is already there, but because of some resignations, we
Okay.
actually have an opening somewhere else that we could wait and hold, and for a few more weeks or maybe a month before we would post that and give us some flexibility in that. So we could then move those people around and not hire for that other position. It wouldn't involve these teachers, whether they would have a job or not. They would have a job. It just might not be a kindergarten job, if that makes sense. But there's another open position somewhere else that we could hold in filling. If the numbers drop substantially, we could reshift people around and fill that position internally. If they stayed where they're at, we could stay with 4 all day, every day kindergarten. So we do have, because of the resignation that will be happening at the next board meeting of a staff member, we would have some flexibility in that.
That would be my recommendation.
Yeah. Well, we also have, I'm sure, parents who, potential kindergartners who are listening in this evening. So if they're undecided, we sure would be anxious for you to make up your mind and let us know so we can make good choices. So
Yeah, and I think one other thing that I haven't heard brought up in the discussion, and I don't know if people know this, but the state of Ohio, as part of our funding formula, allocates so much per classroom teacher to us. And in the case of kindergarten, we're only allocated half as much per teacher. And so that's
Right.
why we're having this discussion and why we have to charge the tuition. And if we don't, if we don't have the tuition, that's why we're in trouble. And I also had one other question. This past year, when we had to go to the home learning, whatever, and did those kindergarten teachers provide lessons for the kids? Or, I mean, okay, so they had their day of instruction. Okay.
They did, but the younger and younger you get, the more and more challenging it is to do remote learning. So, especially at those young ages, preschool, kindergarten, it's just extremely challenging to be able to do those things remotely, because you're relying on the parent to really be the teacher / facilitator for that student. So, yeah,
I know it's difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I'm hearing things correctly here, staying with 4 all day, every day kindergarten, and with the caveat that we're going to obviously continue to see where enrollment is, and if something dramatic goes on of a negative enrollment on the all day, every day kindergarten, we're going to hold off filling this other position within the school district, so we have that flexibility that if those numbers do go down, we could move one of those all day, every day kindergarten teachers. We can move our kindergarten teachers to different spots. That there you would only have 3 all day, every day kindergarten, and then however, 1 or possibly 1.5 purple and gold kindergarten teachers, depending on the numbers.
Yeah.
So we do have some flexibility there. Again, that was based on parents pulling out of all day, every day kindergarten. So as long as there's not this mass exodus of parents pulling out of all day, every day kindergarten, we should be good to go with 4 all day, every day and 1 purple gold teacher.
It's a risk, but I think based on the communication we've had, this is something we need to do for our parents, our students, and our community. We need to take that risk. If something catastrophic happens, I hate to say it, but we'll just go bankrupt earlier. But we need to do this for them. We need to have faith in what we do and hope for the best. This is what the people who elected us want. They want this. And I certainly hope they will help us pass these levies so this will be more viable. We're smaller than Beaver Creek and Centerville. And one thing I've heard lately is it's free here, it's free there. We would certainly love to move toward that as we start getting things passed and have more more proceeds to do that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Virginia, I agree with you. I think we need to do what we can to make it happen for this coming year. You know, just because of the fear of what might happen or the
Right.
the projection of
Right.
what might happen with COVID. You know, I don't think we should be, walking the plank just because something might happen here. You know, I think we take our best foot forward on this, and then we just wait, and then we'll deal with it. Like you said, we'll run out of money sooner. But, I just don't think we should self-inflict here a wound that may not ever come on its own. So I think we should press ahead with it for this coming year.
Okay, one more question. Are teachers that are assigned to these classes, if someone has to be moved somewhere, we're assuming that the teachers that have seniority will stay in those all day, every day positions?
I don't think that's a 100%
Right.
correct assumption. That is one piece of the whole thing. It just depends on other licensure areas. If we have a position somewhere else that someone that only has that license and we have another position that's open, we may have to move somebody, and it may not be the least senior person. So sometimes licensure plays into that also.
Mhm.
So that could be a part of it.
Right.
Well, that's another question that our community is asking. For some reason, they not only want to take care of their students, they also want to protect our teachers. And of course, we don't want anything catastrophic to happen to our teachers either. They've done this for a while. They are proficient at it. That's who we want in the classroom.
Well,
Right.
that's one reason why we need to get this settled early so that we keep our good teachers.
Right.
And if we're looking for new ones, we can hire good teachers. So
Right.
that's why we need to get this thing taken care of.
Decided or sooner. Yeah.
Doug,
Yeah.
if we get to full capacity on our all day, every day, the 25 students times 4 classes, how do we sit financially on that? Do we break even on all day, every day kindergarten then, or are we still running in the red?
Now, if you combine that and the position that we're moving over to the one less person from purple and gold, we'd be on the plus side, and we could handle 2 to 3 months of remote learning before we would be in the red.
But I mean, aside from remote learning, we don't have a deficit. If with the tuition we're charging 100 students, we're breaking even at least. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Now, our current structure is that we have all day, every day kindergarten, and we offer all day, every day kindergarten. So, if we were, since this is for discussion and not necessarily a decision, if we want to change that, that would require a decision at our board meeting on Thursday or subsequent to that. But if we're not changing, it doesn't require us to make a decision, so or formalize a decision. So so we're not taking a vote on it, anything this evening. But
Yeah, because if it's where we ended up with 4 all day, every day, 1 purple gold, and then the caveat of not filling that other position until, for 2 weeks to a month, so we got that flexibility. That's what we're doing right now. So you're correct, David.
all right.
Yep.
So we're not doing any formal action tonight anyway. So
Yep.
It appears based on the discussion that the intent is to not make any changes, at least at this point.
Correct.
We
Yep.
don't have any devastating data that right now that says we need to do that. So, all
Yep.
right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time that you and Kevin Liming and the administrators and such put in to really dissect this and put it back together in a way that helps us feel confident about how we want to move forward. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right, district finances and levy discussion. So this is the easy topic. He says tongue in cheek.
One easy topic to the next here.
So,
Kevin Limey, do you want to go first?
Sure.
We thought we would have a discussion here, kind of set the stage again of the background information, because again, I think it's helpful that we all hear the information again, and then anybody that maybe is listening to the board meeting, maybe for the first time, to give them some context and information also. So Kevin Limey, do you want to just so we're going to kind of set the financial picture, and then we'll go into the levy piece of that.
okay, thank you.
Okay. We've already reviewed the 5-year forecast, so I'll just repeat a few important things here. Of course, the forecast is on the district website if someone out there wants to see it and review it after this discussion. But at the time that we promoted the last levy, we emphasized that if either we would pass the levy or we would implement the phase 4 cuts that would need to be made. Since then, we've been given, as Doug told us earlier, $659,000 of cuts from the state this fiscal year, which ends in about 3 weeks, and possibly, as predicted by someone somewhat in the know, maybe $600,000 more for next year. So that would be about $1.25 million in state cuts that I didn't know about at the time we were promoting the levy. So this forecast that we passed shows that $1.25 million in state cuts in fiscal year 20 and 21. And then it also shows the approximately $1.3 million of phase 4 cuts in 21, and another $1.3 million in 22. This forecast shows a freeze in state funding after those 2 years of cuts at the previous level. A lot of these things are assumed because we don't know what's going to happen with state budget actually. And the bottom line, though, after all of these figures are implemented, is that we will have on June 30th, 2022, we're estimated to have about $414,000, which is a small amount. That's less than one biweekly payroll. The following year in 23, June 30th, we would have a little over $2.7 million deficit. And then June 30, 2024, a $7.1 million deficit. This is assuming no levy passage and assuming that we don't reinstate any of the phase 4 cuts because nothing has been passed. Those are the assumptions we made there to get to a $7.1 million deficit. As you know, we started out with like an 11-point-something million dollar deficit there in that 5th year, and that changes on this one because we've made all those phase 4 cuts. We received some extra money than expected in a couple other areas, and then the effect of that state cut that we weren't expecting. So that pretty much is the fiscal year forecast. As I said, the forecast and all the notes as to how I arrived at those figures are on the website, district website.
Kevin, for the benefit of people that maybe, again, tune in for the first time, probably not very many, but maybe a handful out there, could you just really quickly summarize what the effect of the stage 4 cuts were? 85 supplemental positions, 1 teacher, two certified people, classified people, et cetera. Can you just kind of give a rundown on that real quick?
Right. Doug,
yeah, I can.
To me.
Yep, I can.
Okay.
So just to give you the background on all the cuts, so since 2018 through next school year, because we have a pay freeze next school year. So if you add all those up, it's a cumulative $4.8 million that we have reduced. So in the summer of 2018, we reduced by $500,000. Summer of 2019, $813,000. Additional in 2019 in the summer, another $168,000. the pay freeze for next school year that we had an MOU with the teachers union and certified and classified. That was $1 million. That's for next school year. So if you add all those together, that's $2.3 million, and 20 staff positions eliminated and 10 certified. And then the phase 3, because of our financial situation, we had phase 3 reductions, which were going to happen regardless of the levy passage, just to provide us some financial stability going forward. You add that with our phase 4 reductions, which were put into place because of the levy failure. That is another $2.5 million. That's a total of 33 positions eliminated, 17 certified. So since 2018, so that's 2 years. So you have the 18-19 school year, 19-20 school year. So in 2 school years, we have 33 less positions in the school district, and 17 of them are certified. And at the beginning, we really tried to minimize the impact on students. However, you can only do that for so long, and reduce those positions, and people can only do so much. You know, their plates are only so big, that's why the phase 4 cuts really started impacting the teaching positions and the supplemental positions, because those other reductions were already being done. So does that answer your question, Kevin, of kind of a background there?
Yeah, a couple extra things, of course, that are not without not being noticed. They've definitely been noticed. It's resulted in the elimination of some sports for the upcoming year. And busing now has been extended to all high school busing has been eliminated, and no busing inside of 2 miles, right? Unless you're before 3rd grade, I guess it is.
Yeah.
And
so we had 85 paid supplementals that were eliminated. Some of those were some sports, some were clubs, some were activities, some were like department chair and those kind of positions. And then at Bellbrook Middle School and BCI, those busing, the ineligible zone went out to 2 miles, and then high school busing was eliminated. We also raised fees for high school and added fees for band and marching band and color guard. No lot resurfacing this summer, delaying purchase of Chromebooks for another year. Reducing district-wide staff development, delaying curriculum adoptions in math and science, non-renewing select electronic curriculum subscriptions, and non-renewing a contract with our communications consultant. So 2 library positions were also reduced. World language offerings at the middle school. STEP, which is to get the pull-out program at BCI, was eliminated, and that was that and the world language were actually part of the phase 3 reductions that were going to happen regardless.
all the schools are down now to half day for library, correct? Half day librarian.
There's a half-day librarian at those schools, correct, at each school.
And some of the supplementals that were lost included some rather not insignificant things, such as, Model UN, the newspaper, Junior ROTC, Color Guard, Pep Band, newspaper I already mentioned, Junior Honor National Society, NJHS, and middle school, Camp Kern, things that have been a staple of our district for a long time. So these are not just trivial, nice to have kind of things. They are things that really kind of cut to the core of the culture and what's been used to develop our young people into, our future leaders.
Right. A well-rounded citizen, a well-rounded student, those are the things that really make us well-rounded. And if we think about go back to our own high school careers, middle school careers, and think about all those things that were, that we learned a lot of lessons in. Yes, we learned them in the classroom. However, we also learned a lot of lessons in the clubs we were in, the sports we were in, the activities that we were in. And those are big things that are not going to be happening next year because of the levy failure.
The other thing I think it's important for the community to understand, is that as people's property values go up, the intake from levies don't go up with it, except for the inside millage, which is about 4.5 mils out of the sum 60 some mills or whatever it is we get for our school district. So we get a notional bump every few years based upon new construction, based upon new valuation, but it's in the noise level. It's not what's required. So because of House Bill 920 locking in, our outside millage to whatever the value of the levy was at passage. So if a levy was going to pass for $3 million 10 years ago, 10 years from now, it's still going to get you $3 million. So because the way the state has constructed this funding of its schools and its laws, it is an imperative. It's an absolute essential that recurring levies have to be brought back to the community. And so that's what really needs to be understood. And it's really not easy to understand that. It takes a lot of, first of all, it takes an open mind to listen. And second of all, it takes really taking the time to dig into it and understand it. So this is not just because, we just want to just throw some extra money to schools. It's because the money we fund the school with have been decremented as a function of normal inflation to any business, any person who, works. Whether you're on Social Security or whether you're working a job, you'll see increases from time to time because of inflation. And this is really no different than what we're dealing with here at the school. So if you all really need to understand that, if you don't, please do some research because it's essential to understanding why this school district is having to come back for a levy.
And just to add to that, Kevin, go ahead. Kevin Lyman, go ahead. And then I have something to add too.
Okay, I was just going to say, I think I mentioned this before, but we most likely will be placed in fiscal caution this next year.
Yeah.
Really, maybe whether we place a levy on it the next opportunity and pass it, we still may be in fiscal caution because of our forecast here. And basically what that means is the state comes in and talks to myself and Dr. Kozad, and they want to know what the plan is without a levy to stay in the black 2 years out on the forecast. So whether we, really have hopes and plans, which we never do, to make a bunch more cuts that are really going to be deep, we still have to list all those for the state when they come in a situation where a levy's not been passed and you have to show how you're going to get into black 2 years out. So it takes a lot of time to go through all that stuff, to enter it into their database and work with them on it. It's just kind of another hassle that you don't look forward to when you're a school treasurer or superintendent. We have a lot better things to do than that. But.
So,
well, Kevin, if we just, I would say if we were able to pass the levy, we would, in my estimate, we would not be in fiscal caution going forward. That would put us in solid ground for a few years. So I would have to rework the figures on that.
That's true. You're right. That would put us in the black more than 2 years out. So we would be good.
And just to add to Kevin Price's comments from a couple minutes ago. So, we all know the state only funds us. About 27% of our funding comes from the state. And what just happened with the state cuts they cut us $659,000 this fiscal year. So they let us know in May, late April, early May, for a cut that was based on the entire school year with only 2 months left, and then are probably going to cut us 10% next year. So this is classic what the state does to schools. This is residual budgeting. This is what they do. They say, here's all the money that we have, and let's put everything out there, and then whatever's left over, we're going to give that to the schools, and let's create a funding formula that allows us to give us that amount of money. And so that's classic what the state has been doing to the schools for years. And so, this is why local districts, local communities really need to take control of the spending piece, because at the end of the day, if you pass levies and have levies at the local level, that money stays at your local level. It's guaranteed to stay here. Where if it's money from the state, you never know what money you'll get or not get from the state. So, that is another piece to this whole thing of that we're cut 659, gonna be cut another 600 probably next school year. and there's just no way to plan for that, obviously. But this isn't the abnormal for the state to do. Is if there's financial issues, they cut funding for the school districts, and it's up to the local communities to have to make up for those. That's what's happened for years. The state is not going to come in and save us. They just aren't going to. You know, we had a funding formula meeting back in December, brought in Representative Cupp. We talked about this last meeting. You know, it's not going to help us in our community because of our property wealth and our income level within the community. So again, that 27% from the state, that's based on the property wealth of a community, and the state says our community has a high property wealth and a high capacity to pay for their school district. We have a high ability to pay for our school district. So that's how the funding goes with the state, and that's how we reduced so much this past time. They used the same type of formula, same concept, not the same formula, same concept of those districts that have high wealth, that have a high local ability to pay. We're going to give them a bigger cut because their local communities have a higher and a better ability to pay. Those communities that are lower socioeconomic, they have a lower capacity to pay. So we're going to cut them. We're going to reduce them a lower amount.
Yeah, our funding from the state was cut 11% for this year.
Correct. In May.
Right. So
11% the entire year.
It was 11.7.
11.7. Now, are we
Yeah.
going to have to write a check back to the state?
Basically, yes. We're doing that. We're wiring them the money. It's kind of confusing, but they make some big deductions from their funding before they send us the net check. Well, there's not enough in that net check to make those big deductions for retirements and things like that. So we have to wire them money to cover our school employees' retirement and our state teachers' retirement. Most of it.
Okay.
We're like at least, I would say, $250,000 short of being able to fund the $650,000.
Oh,
On a positive note, I was thrilled to see that our superintendent, Dr. Gozad, organized all of the superintendents in Greene County and made an appeal to the governor to loosen the mandates. Don't hold us responsible right now while we have COVID and all these other things and failing levies. Please take some of the pressures off. He should be commended for that. It's not like any of us just sit around doing nothing, and he actually works really hard on our behalf. I am very thankful about that letter as I read through of it. And the unity between all the superintendents in Greene County was a very good thing. Let's hope they listen.
Yeah, Virginia, I thought was pretty stunning, you know, because there was a level of detail there I hadn't picked up in my 3 months on the board or whatever it's been. But it's like the same song across whatever it was, 8 or 9 different districts here, you know, in the county. It's like, you know, and it's stunning that the state expects you to do this while they don't give you enough money to go do it. And so, but what, to me, the big takeaway was the other districts are in distress as well. Yeah, it isn't some unique situation here due to poor management by any means. It's just an example. What we're faced here with is what other districts are facing. And let's forget about COVID here for a minute. Let's forget about the current, you know, challenges. Those problems still existed as far as unfunded, underfunded mandates.
that's right.
It was very nice to see those detailed, with, again, more detail I've seen to date. I don't know if that's something we have made or can make available to the community. I think it would be important for them to see that letter.
I think we should make that available to the community. They should
I can
know
definitely do that. I would put that in
what
my.
we're doing.
I can put that in my blog, Cosad's Corner.
Please.
So
Okay, please do.
I'll email that out.
Very good.
Okay. So as we kind of set the table here and talked about different things, so just again, we're just discussing, kind of thinking out loud here of possibilities as we transition to thinking about possibilities for our next levy. So I guess the first question is, do we want to go for a levy in November? And so I'll just throw out the questions here and then we can go back to them. So do we want to go for a levy in November? If we do, what kind of levy? Once we figure that out or have a discussion about that, the duration of the levy, and then the amount of the levy. So as I'm just trying to put,
Yep.
questions in my mind of what are some things, and again, we don't have to have all these answers tonight, but we definitely want to see thoughts and comments about that so that Mr. Liming and I can go back and take all that information and then come back with a recommendation and so forth, as we need to get moving on. August 5th is the deadline, so we have to have 2 readings before that. We have a meeting Thursday, we have a meeting on June 3rd, and then July 9th.
Yes.
So we have just 3 meetings left. So I guess the first question is, do we want to go for a levy in November?
My thought is that I think there's no way that we would not.
I don't think we have a choice.
We don't
Yeah.
have any choice.
No.
We have to go for a levy.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that is a yes on that.
We're not voting though.
Yes, that's right. Let me say that.
No, but I mean,
Yeah,
but if the answer is
everybody
no,
has their opportunity.
but if the answer is no on that, then we don't have to have the other questions. You know what I
I
mean?
just want to make that clear that,
We're not voting on that. No,
Thank you, Mary.
we're on a discussion here. We're on a discussion. Again, if everybody's saying no on that, then we
Yeah. there's no
not to have the other questions.
yeah, true.
That'd bring about a whole different bunch of questions.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Okay. Then what kind of levy? And so when I say this, that means a new money levy, a replacement levy, an emergency levy, an income tax levy. Those are the kind of options. Kevin Liming, did I miss any on those of
All right.
possibilities, or it could be maybe a combination of those?
Yeah, there are several different combination type levies that can be done too. The question would be, do we have enough time to educate the public on something if it's a big change from anything we've ever done around here before?
Right. I'm of the opinion that that there are opportunities for us to look at other ways of funding. We probably don't have the runway to really fully educate the community on what does that mean, in order to be able to, particularly with an income tax. What does, that's going to require some education to understand how does it impact our senior citizens? How does it impact our non-property owners? How does it affect property owners who are earning income? So there's so many factors in that one. Although I think in the long term, that's a great way to go. I think for the short term, it's too much to try to educate and be clearly explaining what it means for people.
Let's get something that the community will support and pass. If we want to go with an income tax later,
Yeah.
maybe that could be done.
As I mentioned in the last meeting, our actual school board meeting, when I gave a statement, I'm of the very strong opinion that we need a levy. And just as strongly, I believe it needs to be an emergency levy. And the reason it needs to be an emergency levy is twofold. One, the very type of levy conveys the situation we're faced with. If we take it back to the ballot with a continuing levy that's failed twice now, I'm not sure why we think actually I do think it might pass. It could pass. And why I have some optimism with respect to any levy is just because of the shift in the voting results between the two recent levies. You know, in the first levy, 5,300 people voted thereabouts. It failed by 1,400. The next levy, 6,400 people voted. It failed by 308, I think it was. 154 or 5 people had voted differently, it would have passed. And so I think without COVID, I think it's a slam dunk, it would have passed. So I think the messaging is getting out there. But the reality of it is we have faced COVID, you know, and it did, I think, just keep the teeter-tottered in the wrong direction on this. But I'm not willing to bet that, you know, by November that the same song will get us, to, you know, anything different than what we've seen up to this point. So what we saw was 2 failures. And so I think the community really needs to understand that this is not just a, hey, we need some more money situation. This is an emergency. We're in a crisis. Look at what's been cut. The busing, and I continue to be enormously bothered by the supplemental positions that were cut. You know, and for the first time, some of the parents are realizing, oh, yes, that means some sports teams. You know, yes, it means, yeah, there's no more science there. Yeah, art and STEM have been cut. And so I think there's this, you know, budding awareness that this has been a lot more of a impactful than what folks realize. And so I don't think, I think if we say that's what it is, an emergency, I think it's really going to get people's attention. I think the levy will be successful. Essentially, certainly it will be successful. The other thing, inherent to a emergency levy, it's a limited period levy. It's not a continuing levy. And while I'm fully aware that creates problems when it comes for renewal, you know, somewhere down the road, we have to deal with our emergency at hand, the nearest fire, we say in the military, you know. So the nearest fire is we need funding now. The best way you convey that is, hey, we got an emergency over here. We pull the fire alarm, and, you know, we'll get the fire truck here, and he'll squirt all the water out, and the fire's out. Okay, we're good. But he's got to go. You know, we have to go somewhere else later, but we'll worry about that later. And so I'm strong opinion. It needs to be emergency. And I think we'll see success if we do that. The other thing, we should talk in terms of if the levy does pass in November. Some of the feedback we got from some people were that, hey, you know, it depends on the type of like kids you have. You know, do they respond to negative or positive, you know, impact or consequences? And now we can talk in terms of positively what would happen if we can get a levy passed in November. Some of the cuts that were made, significant number of those can be restored. And of course, Kevin and Dr. Kozab will have to really analyze that. And it's driven as well by how much money we would actually make the levy valid for. But some of the cuts are quite recoverable because the money would have going to arrive at the same time. So whether it had passed in April or whether it passes in November, the money is arriving at the same time. Unfortunately, for some of the staff that were let go, it doesn't work for them because it's going to be 2 months past the start of the new school year. So that's not easily recoverable. But some of the other things, such as busing and supplementals and potentially to get creative with art, STEM, I don't know. But I think you could see a significant recovery, and certainly we get out of the financial stress. And Kevin Limey, thank you for pointing out, you know, that, you know, we're already in trouble. You know, as of 2022, we're supposed to have on the order of around $3 million in the bank, you know, per state guidance, and we're $2.5 million below that in just 2 years.
Right.
So we really need to do something. Let's call it what it is. It's an emergency, and I think we're going to have a much more favorable outcome with the community come November if we do that. That's my very strong opinion. Of course, I'll listen to what everybody else has to say, but that's kind of like my position on it.
I think it's a really good point. Communicating that we are in a dire situation, the name of the levy does certainly do that. Mary, you've been through these a variety of times. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking, I agree with the fact that if you call it an emergency levy, has a little bit more punch than just a continuing levy. But you have to think about the fact that if you call it if you just have an emergency levy for 3 to 5 years, whatever it is, that in 5 years, we're going to need more money. Plus, if we would lose this money in 5 years, where would we be? It's like you, if you get a small raise, like you're getting small raises now, and you learn to live with that, and it pays the bills that you've been accumulating all along. Can you do without it? When it comes down in 5 years down the road, there's going to be another fight to renew it. And you're going to need that money plus some additional money probably to function as a district. So I agree with everything Kevin's saying about the emergency, but we just need to remember that we're going to have to, down the road, it's going to be tough to renew it, whatever.
We have to figure out what our plan is beyond that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It just gives us time. Mary, I appreciate your sentiment on that, and you've obviously been doing this a lot longer than I've even thought of it. So your input is extremely valuable. But again, I just think if the consequence is we fail another levy in November because we don't make it emergency, I'm not sure we're any better off. So, and if we get an emergency levy, it gives us, I would recommend 5-year levy duration. And then we've got 5 years to figure out something else, because a property tax-based levy in this community, I think, is hitting the saturation point, especially for our elderly and people on fixed income.
I agree that maybe we need to tell people and be honest with them. This is an emergency, and we can't seem to pass continuing levies. So where would we be in 5 years? Exactly where we are now. We have to keep pushing on this. We have to keep educating. We have to keep doing stuff. But we have to do something that's going to pass for the sake of our families and our students.
Yeah, I know.
An emergency levy is a flat dollar. Kevin Lyman, can you give me a little, make sure that I'm speaking truthfully here?
Yeah.
An emergency levy is for a flat dollar amount, and it is the same amount every year, regardless of new construction, value increases, anything like that. Is that correct?
Exactly. And that would just be obviously on that amount that we pass. We would still get those items on the levies that have passed over the years. But
right.
Yes. And you have to come up with on this one, instead of saying, as we did on the last one, 5.7 mil levy, this one, if it's an emergency, it would be, a levy to raise $3.5 million a year or something like that, where you state a dollar amount rather than millage. And I'm pretty sure I've got a message into the Board of Elections to answer this question. I don't know unless Dr. Kozad does, but I'm not sure if the millage even goes on the ballot for an emergency. I think it would say, you're voting to raise $3.5 million a year, and it would stay at that flat amount that we would get each year.
Okay.
I think the millage is on the ballot, but the dollar amount is more prominent on the ballot. I think both of them are on there.
So that's its beginning millage.
So again, just to add to that, so whether it's an emergency, if it's emergency or new, the real estate tax, it can be anywhere for up to 5 years. So the
emergency is a maximum of 5 years as well.
Yes.
Emergency, yes, it's up to 5 years.
Oh, I was thinking it was up to 10.
No, that's what I had researched. It was up to 5 years. It's either up to 5 years or then continuing. So it's one or the other. Whether it's a new levy or emergency, I think at some other point it had been up to 10 years. I think they changed that.
Okay.
In the past.
I feel so confident that if we'd actually had the election on March 17th, it would have passed. why we won't just keep it the same that we were doing. Because now we can do the positive, like Kevin Price said. When this passes in November, we will get these programs back, or we can get this option back. Why that wouldn't be more of an attractive option for us?
Yeah, that's true.
My opinion, Karen, it's just the messaging. You know, if you say continuing levy, it's the same thing. It's been on the ballot twice. It failed. Although, again, talking out both sides of my mouth here, it is going in the right direction. I mean, it's so narrowly failed this last time.
Right.
But do we really, really, you know, I had some, if you go to Vegas, you got some discretionary money, but, you know, you don't probably want to second mortgage your house on a sure thing in Vegas, right? And I don't think this is a sure enough thing at all for November, because especially if we have another hit, you know, with COVID and we see the economy take, you know, another turn again, you know, if you just come back with the same thing, it may not pass, you know. Probably will, but you know, do we really want to take that risk?
And
Yeah.
it's a presidential election. And so we're going to have more people out there voting.
Correct.
Beaver Creek recently, not this time, but not that long ago, won a levy after 3 or 4 fails. I can't remember, but I know it was not that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
But notably, you know, they've got a lot more commercial and other payees into their property taxes that we don't have. You know, we're basically taxing, you know, everybody heavily here, much more so than what you see in these other places, because they can pull from a Fairfield Mall or something like that, you know, whereas we're paying it out of just people's homes here.
Except that we don't have an income tax.
Correct.
Right.
And neither does Beaver Creek, but right.
And in our county, it's only Beaver Creek and us that does not.
Right.
Okay, so we want to move on, and maybe we can come back to that one. I'm not sure if we're
Sure.
quite on the same page with that one, but I think it's close. So the amount of the levy. So taking into consideration the 5-year forecast, impact of the state cuts, and then also bringing any of those phase 4 cuts back. So if you remember the 5-year forecast that Kevin Lyman was talking about with the year 2021, 22. So not next school year, the school year after that, we have $400,000 in the black. We had about 1.5, I think somewhere about 1.3 or $1.5 million in the black. But with those state cuts, we were reduced down to about $400,000. So again, if you bring back anything, you just got to keep that in mind, that is going to be an additional expenditure that was already accounted for in the 5-year forecast. So I'm not saying do or don't do that. Just keep that in mind, and keep in mind the impact of the state cuts. The state cuts are in the 5-year forecast. And then just the 5-year forecast in general. So we raised about $3.3 million, Kevin Liming, right? $3.3 million around there.
I think it was 3.361 to be
Yeah.
exact. 3,361,000, and that's what 5.7 raised. And David Graham told me that would be what he would be certifying again. I was hoping that might change somewhat, but that would be what we went for before we found out about state cuts.
Well, I think we need to add in the state cuts to whatever amount we go to, because we can't afford to eat those.
Yeah, 1.25 million.
Exactly.
No.
Maybe
For what it's worth, I think
5 years.
we need to make this as simple as we can, you know, for the community. Because again, you have to spend a lot of time really understanding this subject, right? So what did we just ask for? Just for all practical purposes, we asked for $3.3 million, right? Whether it passed in April, whether it passes in November this year, the money was going to arrive at the same time. So ask for what we asked for last time, because that's what we needed. You know, it didn't like we went and sharpened our pencils and said, oh, by the way, we really didn't need that much, you know, because in that, you know, that doesn't give us much credibility if we can say we can get by with less. especially if we're going to try to restore anything. Secondly, yeah, we had 3.3 million we were asking for, but as Mary just said, we just encumbered an additional $650,000, from the state. It's going to go into next year as well, and that may be our new baseline. And how can we believe it's anything but that's what our new baseline is going to be? So my recommendation would be 3.3 plus 6.5. It's a $3.95 million emergency levy. That would be my recommendation. And that gets us back to where we would have been if it had passed in March. And, it was deferred till April. We'd essentially be, same place. Although actually, if it had passed then, we'd have been $650,000 short. So there might be some lining in the clouds here. If we pass this in November, we can actually recoup what the state just did to us. So yeah, I would recommend 3.3 plus 650,000, $3.95 million emergency levy for 5 years.
Just another angle to look at that from, it is, if you look at it just based on a 5-year forecast kind of perspective, whether we go for a 5-year levy or not, it's a 5-year, forecast
Right.
kind of perspective, that if you say we had $1.3 million in cuts over the next 2 years, but maybe we look at that over a 5-year forecast perspective rather than just the 2 years. So if you do something like that, you're at more probably, $250,000 additional, by 250 or so, or $300,000 per year also. So that's just another way of kind of just, we
Leveling
don't know
out.
what years 3, 4, and 5 look, whether we're going to have new cuts or whether that's going to be the new baseline, like Kevin Price said. Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah, we're banking on the state, right? What they're going to do. And I think it's more predictable that they'll keep it low than it was predictable that 2 months before the end of the fiscal year, they were going to drop a $650,000, cut on us. So I wouldn't trust them. I would plan as though it's not going to come back. And Doug, as you said earlier, by, using the community's funding for it, we're less dependent upon the state. And, unfortunately, they don't do what they should do by law and by what's right from the state level. So if they don't, we have to do what we have to do on our end to make it work. So I wouldn't trust them. That's coming back year after next. I would say, nope, we're going to assume it's not. 3.3 plus a 650, or call it 600 because it's 650 this year, 600 next year, whatever. But around 3.9 million is what I think it should be.
I agree. We're on our own. Let's do it right and make it count.
I agree. Although I'm not voting.
No voting tonight. Discussion.
No voting tonight.
No voting
These
for
are
you.
discussion points. Discussion points.
Yeah, because I know people want a little bit of time to mull some of this over in their heads too, just to feel comfortable with that. Because I wouldn't feel comfortable voting this evening. I do want to get a chance to think this through a little bit, maybe get some feedback from a couple community members that, whose perspective I kind of rely on. Although the logic is there. The thing that does concern me is, will it just appear to be too big a pill to swallow for some of our population?
We can't function without it.
I know.
So
What helps is it's fully explainable, David. We
True.
justified we needed 3.3 million. We didn't get it. Now the community's seeing the consequences. And anybody that's following the news knows we got hit with another $650,000 from the state and $600,000 next year. So it's anybody that will take the time and listen with an open mind and really be willing to be informed that this is understandable to them. There will be certainly people, and we always have to be sensitive to this, that there are people this does constrain, especially our elderly population that's retired. Understand that. And I don't have a good answer for that other than we need a different model than what we're using. But this is an emergency. And so, we just need to press with it as it is, because where do we do the most good, least harm? It's one of those kind of things, so.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I think if we keep in mind that this isn't the end game, we still have work to do to help get the model, like you're talking about, get the funding model in better shape, when we can fully educate our community on how that would work.
And what
So
helps, you know, if you're going back to whether it doesn't have to be an emergency levy to be a limited period levy, right? But
No, you're right.
But regardless, whether it's emergency or not, if it's a fixed period levy, that's a different song than what we've sung up to this point, you know. And so that would be a comfort. A lot of the elderly people were complaining about this. This is another permanent levy, you know, we're signing up for. It's a different song when we say, look, no, it's 5 years, and we're going to be looking at other alternatives. You know, that we have an emergency. Here we go. So.
Maybe we'll get a lot of nice letters again this week before Thursday where the community tells us where they want us to go. I really have appreciated those notes over the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
Well, I'll just say that since the coronavirus, my husband and I have both been reminded daily that we are both elderly, and he is retired. So, and I don't want to pay extra taxes, but I will, because education is the most important thing. And people need to realize that these children that we are educating are the ones that are going to be taking care of all of us as we become more elderly. So
That's right. We want them to have good jobs so that they can pay our Social Security.
yeah, that's true.
Well, another reminder, 4 of us on here that are voting do not have children in the school system, and we are voting these taxes on ourselves happily.
Yes.
And I might be speaking for myself, but I really need the great teachers to stay and to be attracted to our schools, because they have to undo all the damage I've done in the last 3 months teaching at home.
And I have
Kevin Price still has students
grandchildren.
at home.
I have 3 grandchildren in the schools, and I care very much about their education. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
That's really what it boils down to.
Yep.
Right, and
What's
this
the right,
levy is
what's the right
really,
thing to do for the community?
this levy is really critical because, as we talked about before, if it fails in November, we are another year behind then. We would not collect until
True.
January
Right.
22 on any future levy passage after that.
Yeah. You know, and Kevin Price, you were saying, you know, we've got this $650,000 loss. Well, because the levy didn't pass the first time around, we didn't get a $3 million intake for this year that we would have had. So we're that much in the hole each time it gets delayed. One more giant step in the hole.
Right. You know, if it doesn't pass in the fall here, you know, we're trying to stay positive here that if it does pass, you know, what are some things that we could bring back because we get funding the same as if we passed in March. However, there's the unfortunate flip side of that is if it does not pass, then we are another year behind. You know, we're saying that we need at least, you know, $3.3 to $3.9 million. So you're behind another amount of that. So what are the consequences? What are the negative consequences of a levy not passing in the fall? So unfortunately, there's 2 pieces to that. There's the things that we definitely would love to bring back, but there's the unfortunate consequences that we're in even a deeper hole, a whole another year without that funding that is needed. It becomes, not that it is even, it's already extremely critical. As we all know, the budgets are the most important thing going on in the district. It's the most critical issue, and we need to get the budget figured out and the funding piece figured out for our school district, because as we are all well aware that there's been major consequences of the levy failures the past one before this, but there really is now. I mean, it just compounds on itself. So it's not a place where any of us want to be. These are not easy or fun decisions. These are not the reasons why, and I won't speak for board members, but I would assume for board members also, but for the school administrators, we don't get in the business here to take things away from students and all those experiences that really make a well-rounded student. Those are the last things that we want to do.
Right.
So are we driven to voting as early as Thursday then, or is there just a motion and then there's findings and we come back and vote the next two meetings, or what's the process here?
Well, I think Kevin Liming has probably some figures. Tentative,
Right.
but we would-
Right,
if we
I-
would vote the next time,
What I need to know, I think June 30th is the latest that we can do it, because we have to do two resolutions at different meetings.
right,
One resolution in each at two different meetings. And in order to do the resolution at the June 30th meeting, I will need to know this Thursday what you want me to put in that resolution, because I have to ask our
Right.
bonding attorney to write this legalese for this resolution. I could come up with having to do two of them. I mean, it's kind of a minor thing, but it costs more, and it would ideally it'd be great if I knew Thursday, at least in a discussion like this one, generally what to give Doug. I guess Doug does the actual recommendation, to give him an idea of what he's going to recommend on June 30th, and then what I will prepare with the bonding attorney, for that formal resolution for June 30th. So I'm thinking June 30th, but we really can't do it Thursday unless I can hurry up and get a resolution from the bonding attorney. I think he could probably throw it together if he's not on vacation or something like that, because we work with one guy mainly.
Again, Kevin Long and I can sit down. We can further look at this, and we can come back with a recommendation on Thursday, and then we can, the board can discuss whether that recommendation looks good or we need to tweak, and we probably would have enough information then for Kevin to be able to come back at the June 30th meeting with an actual resolution, if that sounds
Right.
okay
That'd be
to the
great.
board.
That would work for me.
that sounds fine.
Would that be okay?
So essentially, we make an official recommendation on Thursday at a board meeting where we vote on it. Okay,
Sounds
And
good.
at the end of the month, it would be the official resolution, but essentially Thursday would be pretty much the decision of this is what we're doing.
okay.
Could I ask one more question? Is there anyone here among the 5 board members that know for sure that they will not be able to attend on this Thursday or on June 30th, those two meetings? Because the June 30th meeting, I believe, is at 8 a.m.
Right,
And so we want to make, in years past, we've run that June 30th meeting with 3 board members, which is cutting it pretty close, especially
Yeah.
if you're going to vote on a levy, you'd like to have all 5 there.
right. And I think officially we have to have four people voting in favor of the resolution.
Right. I think you're right on that one. Yes, for a levy.
So as a reminder, and can anybody let Kevin know either this evening or tomorrow if you're going to miss either the June 30th meeting or the meeting on Thursday, the June 11th meeting. And then those meetings will be held under the same circumstances. We'll be here with virtual meetings and broadcast for our community to be able to watch. And the same is true for the July 9th meeting. We're still covered for a meeting this way, I think, through the end of the year, unless the governor rescinds that. But at least for now, we'll continue to meet in this virtual kind of environment. Any other questions or comments on the levy discussion? I'd really appreciated each of you participating so fully in this whole process. I'm very happy that we can have civil and lively debate and discussion you're a good group to work with, and I appreciate that very much. Kevin Winding and Dr. Kozak, thank you so very much for your incredible dedication to helping us work through this crisis that we've got.
Welcome.
All right. There is one motion that if there's nothing else, there is one motion that we need to make, and that is for adjournment. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Mary.
I was thinking everybody wanted to stay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Sloughman. All right, any discussion on the adjournment? All right. Mr. Liming, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. France,
Yes.
Mrs. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Sloughman.
Yes.
All right. All right, the meeting is adjourned at 8:44. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your evening.